A surprise for Auto Mundial when we went looking for the lap of luxury and didn't find it in an executive saloon, but somewhere completely different. As Ford takes the wraps off the most expensive Range Rover ever, we take a look under the skin of a vehicle that's a style and engineering icon. And here's another change for Auto Mundial and another icon, though Yamaha's all-conquering R1 is a machine of a completely different sort. But first, indulge us as we take you on a trip through a lap of luxury that indulges what you might think is the exclusive preserve of a privileged few, but in fact belongs to a much wider group of people. This is the new BMW 7 Series, the latest addition to the prestige maker's luxury big saloon range, a car that rivals the S-Class for chauffeur-driven luxury, except that the new 7 has so much onboard electronic equipment that you may feel as if you need two chauffeurs, one to drive the car and one to operate the technology. But the name of the game is comfort and luxury, whether you're talking about front seat or rear seat passengers. There should be headroom, legroom and shoulder room, and you should feel no pain as the big saloon shrinks continents. As we all know, the same is true throughout the whole of the Mercedes range, not just at its upper levels. You don't need the S-Class to give you the legendary smooth and supple ride of the three-pointed star, although the interior of lesser models obviously lacks something compared to their illustrious master. But this is hardly Spartan stuff. The seats are big and comfortable, adjust in 100 different ways and directions, and remember your favourites for you, along with your chosen mirror positions, anything and everything to cosset the driver. You know what it's like up at the top end of the marketplace. Leather, posh bits of handmade wood trim, all carefully cut and glued here, there and everywhere. It's all lap of luxury stuff. And it's not just German cars. Pick almost anything out of the Volvo range and you'll find the same story. And of course, the more money you spend, the more luxurious and decadent the comfort into which you can fit your well-padded capitalist rear end and all the little trinkets which you are accustomed to bestow upon it from time to time. Which of course is true in any car, not just Volvo. And why not? After all, you've earned it. Long hours in the office, all that time away from friends, family and home, slaving away at the golf club, making important contacts, discussing the finer points of contractual obligations over an industrial strength gin and tonic that would be fatal to most normal people, or persuading your most important client that it's essential to have the 64 Lafitte with a meal whose expense varies inversely to its size and is matched only by the unpleasantness of the waiter who served it. Oh yes, it's tough at the top, and that's why there have to be rewards. Comfy big cars being one of the most important. But it's not just capitalist rear ends which are generously padded, nor the seats onto which they are slumped at the end of a long, hard day at the dinner table. Conference table. In fact, this degree of luxury is not merely found at the lower levels of the corporate tree, but is in fact regularly and extensively surpassed as a matter of course. And how upsetting must it be to discover that the minions upon whose broad and hard-working shoulders your success depends are in fact even better rewarded than you yourself. In some respects they are anyway. Yes, the cheerful blue-collar workers whose honest sweat pays for the golf club subscriptions and the lease payments on your big saloon car, a lot of them sit in far more comfort, surrounded by far more toys than you yourself. Of course, it makes a great deal of sense. Long-distance drivers, by definition, spend hours in their seats. Lorry makers know this, and they fit astoundingly complicated and comfortable seats into their vehicles as a result. And we have to say that unless you have tried, one of the in-house or specialist original equipment seats available to the modern truck driver, you have never experienced true comfort on the road. For a start, most seats are air suspended, which means that the springing is sublime. Think about this for a moment. You sit on a cushion of air. The cab itself is air cushioned from engine vibration and road harshness. And then there's the vehicle suspension as well. Although the way the cab and seats float does allow designers to scrap the ride comfort part of the suspension dilemma and concentrate on road holding. So there you are, floating on air. Your seat adjusts infinitely in about 700 different directions. Plus, it's the most anatomically correct and comfortable shape to begin with. And it's made from high quality materials. Luxury just doesn't begin to cover it. But your big saloon has everything. Expensive 6-pack CD, aircon, sat-nav, maybe even a DVD player. And that's just as a beginning. As satellite navigation and communication merge with the mobile phone to become telematics, and everything on the vehicle becomes automatic. Rain sensing wipers, night sensing lights, owner sensing central locking, radar cruise control. It's a long list and it keeps on growing. As we said earlier, it's all there when you reach the top. And it's also all there when you start from the bottom and don't get much higher up the corporate ladder. Driver comfort is a key element of commercial vehicle design. A happy driver is a good driver, and a good driver delivers the goods on time. And that's how commercial fleet operators make money or just keep their costs down. So no expense is spared in providing the right working environment. Satellite navigation might as well have been invented for lorry drivers. No more stopping in the high street to ask the way, just follow the little arrow all the way to your destination. Listening to your favourite CD on a hi-fi installation that's usually good enough to make executive saloon car drivers green with envy. All the high-end makers are represented in the cabs of the big trucks, and it doesn't end there. All other considerations aside, the available space inside the cab is massive. Never mind big and comfy rear seats. What about a dining area that folds out to make a large comfy bed, complete with television set to while away the nighttime hours? These are living and sleeping quarters for the long-distance drivers, and once again the amount of time a driver could spend in his cab dictates the level of spending on making it as comfortable and appealing as possible. But out of sight, the vehicle is communicating with base, so the fleet manager knows where it is all the time, what mileage it has covered, fuel usage and much, much more. Importantly, the driver's hours at the wheel can be monitored, so he can be reminded to take a break when the regulations dictate. And there's a safety alarm system as well to guard against theft and road-going mishaps as well. All things considered, commercial vehicle drivers have it very comfortable, and so they should. Life is difficult enough for them anyway, driving something this big about the place. So it's nice to know you won't run out of fuel, or if the engine's overheating going uphill, then someone at the office probably knows about it before you do. And it's nice to know they're all sitting in air-conditioned comfort with all that crew cab space behind them. We'd all much rather see them asleep by the roadside in a nice warm bed than nodding off on the motorway because the cab's so uncomfortable. The Land Rover story continues with the shape of the newest Range Rover, and the Yamaha story continues with the revised R1. Two manufacturers offer revised versions of living legends, the Yamaha R1 in a moment, but first, the new Range Rover. This is the RAI Exhibition Centre in Amsterdam, and at a show intended for commercial vehicles there were a number of things that looked like cars, a few estate cars and a few more off-roaders. And the reason is simple. Dutch law says that if a vehicle has a steel load floor instead of rear seats, it is a commercial vehicle, and the resulting tax reduction virtually halves its price. A fitting venue for Land Rover then, in view of the fact that the first ever vehicle to bear that name was designed for agricultural and commercial purposes in 1947. When Rover's engineering boss Maurice Wilkes wanted a replacement for his Jeep, he was unhappy to find there was no British-made substitute and set about designing one, putting the engine from a Rover 10 into a Jeep chassis. The result was interesting enough for Rover to commit to a purpose-made steel chassis, the more powerful Rover 60 engine, and a pilot run of 25 vehicles, swiftly increased to 50. 48 were made, and almost half of them still survive. And in that simple truth lies the whole secret of Land Rover success. These were tough, effective, go-anywhere off-roaders that anyone could service and fix, and they found instant popularity in every outlying community around the world. Planned production in year one was doubled to 8,000, and 3 years later almost 20,000 rolled out of Solihull on their way to every continent on Earth. By 1954, production had reached 100,000. It was 500,000 by 1966. A full million had been made by 76, and now the total build since 1947 is approaching 2 million vehicles. The idea of an upmarket version of the Land Rover was first suggested in 1952, and the Road Rover raised its head again 4 years later. The idea resurfaced a third and final time in 1966, and this time it went the distance, and quite some distance it was too. Early on, the decision was taken to make this version of the Road Rover completely separate to the Land Rover, as perception of this area of the marketplace was already changing. Jeep had raised its sights and its standards with the Wagoneer, and in the Range Rover we could see the very first beginnings of the off-road market segment, which grew so rapidly in the 20 years since the first Range Rover in 1970. Now there's a new Range Rover, and we do mean new. Though there were different series of the original, this is a new car. Range Rover not revised, but reinvented. As the company changed hands and moved on to its eventual new home under the Ford banner, no less than £1 billion has been spent on developing a car which costs as much as an S-Class and rides like one as well, but without sacrificing the astounding off-road capability of its predecessor. That, at least, was the objective, and scoffers might think the project doomed from the outset on hearing that Rover has scrapped the steel ladder chassis and beam axle, so long considered the only means of giving a vehicle the strength and articulation necessary to deal with serious off-road terrain. In their place comes a new and strong body shell supporting McPherson struts at the front and a double wishbone independent rear suspension. Part of the huge financial investment included a £60 million stamping plant with the largest press of its kind in Europe, bashing out almost 60,000 panels a week under its 8,000-tonne onslaught. The new body factory, £80 million, uses more than 100 robots to produce 10 new bodies every hour, 10 of what the company believes are the largest unitary bodies in the motoring world. So large that extra space was needed in the new paint shop built to accommodate Freelander a few years ago. £15 million more. Inside, it's big. New interior features are matched by new interior dimensions, and though the Range Rover has all the toys, it also has a neat, and uncluttered dash. Very nice, thank you. Plus a lot of electronics and comfort fitments from the BMW X5, which is, you might expect, a rival for the cash of potential buyers. But where BMW moved the goalposts and went for ride comfort on the road over and above any kind of off-road capability, Range Rover is meant to provide X5 comfort and Range Rover off-roading. All those who cringed at the words unitary and independent rear suspension may now eat your hearts out, because the Range Rover has increased suspension travel over the previous model and, thanks to electronics, behaves almost as if it still has a beam axle anyway. Sensors, which can tell if it's on tarmac or gravel, either allow the rear wheels to act independently for an executive ride on metalled roads, or they ensure that the lifting of one wheel reacts downwards on the other side, making it behave as if it had a beam axle in the rough. The result is that it does indeed appear to have all the cross-country capability that made the previous version a byword, and that, despite a considerable increase in size, especially in width. In fact, almost everyone who has driven it has emerged with a host of praise, and not just for its sheer capability, which is hugely impressive and much aided by the electronic suspension, short overhangs at either end, and astonishing ground clearance. But on top of that comes a degree of control that's almost breathtaking. The Range Rover attacks terrain in a way that Hummer would be proud of, and dominates it in a way Hummer owners are bound to admire. This is off-roading at the very highest level, and behaviour like this begins to justify the equally aggressive pricing. But where the new Range Rover is less impressive is, obviously, on the highway, and the reason it is less impressive is not that it fails or has weaknesses, but simply because it sets out to achieve the apparently impossible and only almost succeeds. Part of the problem is caused by the things that make it so pleasurable to drive. High behind the wheel, with the kind of panoramic view normally only enjoyed by the truck drivers we saw earlier, you feel comfortable. But then you notice the width and find that anything less than a motorway is a narrow road you have to think about quite carefully. And as soon as you start to go quickly, it's clear that centre of gravity and all-up weight are acting in harmony against the road holding. It rides like an S-Class up to a point, but after that point you are going to need a lot of road to calm things down. But it's still S-Class money, and it's your choice.
It's not only the world of four-wheels that's forever changing, it's also a time for development and new ideas for those who make and manufacture two-wheeled performance machinery. And for the third generation of Yamaha's R1, read Generation Excitement, as the Japanese manufacturer looks to make a sports bike more agile and easier to control than its predecessors. It's 4 years since the first version hit the roads, and since then, bike technology has hardly sat still, as developers look to make a road-going version of their successful race machine. It's all very well, though, if you want to travel fast in a straight line, but sooner or later, you're going to have to turn a corner, and Yamaha believe they've done this with their new look model. Whereas the R1 has always been very quick, it wasn't, and the manufacturer will be the first to admit, particularly smooth when it came to cornering. However, the 2002 YZF R1 has undergone a number of changes compared to the earlier models, including a new chassis, a redesigned swing arm, and a new exhaust system. And that's not all. The one-piece handlebars have been lowered, while the footrests are higher, and for the first time, the R1 is now fuel-injected. And the result? Well, it smiles all round.
First R1, second R1, third R1 ね. Same philosophy, but includes new one. Very difficult, step by step. Very exciting cornering machine. So different, more high speed, more max power. No, only cornering.
A lot of chalk has gone onto Yamaha's blackboards in a bid to make the right kind of improvements. And one man impressed by the new developments is former motorbike racer Randy Mamola.
It's unbelievably light for what it is, and with the power to weight ratio, it's just very, very strong. very similar to what race bikes are designed. You know, you have a 190 horsepower race bike, it weighs 130 kilos, about 50 kilos less than what the R1 does, and about 40 more horsepower, 45 more horsepower.
Braking's another area developers were keen to improve on, and they believe they've come up trumps with a new look setup which includes new caliper pistons, sintered pads and more rigid brake hoses, all designed to give more power and feel. Also, the R1 now has 43mm forks, 2 mils fatter than before, making them stronger under braking.
When the first R1 came out, you know, it redefined the whole class of sport bike. The bike being so light, that much power. You know, now they've got more suspension with it, with the front forks a little bit longer, and just redefines everything, and it's just making it that much more strong bike.
Inside the engine block, there's new bores and piston rings to reduce friction, plus the conrods are lighter but 10% stronger, while the weight of the valves has been reduced by 2 grams. Yamaha have also raised the position of the engine by 20mm, resulting in a better weight distribution, especially when it comes to cornering.
Biggest difference is when you exiting a corner with the old R1, as soon as you open the throttle, the bike wants to go wide. It had understeer. This bike goes where you want to go.
In fact, the front-end geometry is almost unrecognisable for those familiar with the old-style R1. The fork offset, previously at 35mm, is now at 25, the same as the R7.
It's not very often that I'm pleased with what we achieve, but on this bike, if we look at competitors, this is a really good level for a production bike.
In performance terms, what does all this mean? Well, the new R1 is capable of delivering a top speed of 175 miles per hour and 152 brake horsepower. So the message from Yamaha is clear. The 2002 model, while retaining the power of old, is now more controllable and easier to ride.